Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome.
Welcome everyone to our weekly assembly for Sunday, May 9th, 2021. On this sunny spring morning, it's good to be present together as a congregation. Whether this is one of your first visits or you've been with us for many times for many decades, we're glad that you're here as a part of our gathered community. As a part of keeping our community connected, we invite everyone to make use of the chat during assembly and to stop by our Zoom coffee hour immediately after assembly. The link to the coffee hour will be available in the chat, and it can also be found in your recent emails from FUS. Please note that members of our Board of Trustees will host a breakout room in chat today for questions about the upcoming annual meeting. Annual meeting, you ask? Why, yes, the annual meeting is coming up on Sunday, May 23rd, right after assembly. You can check out the May newsletter for more info. If you're new to FUS or you'd like to find out a bit more about how we do things around here, we invite you to join our Welcome to FUS session today at noon. The link for that will also show up in the chat a little later in assembly. We have two congregational songs today with an invitation for you to sing along. FUS Music Director Barb Brooks and I met a few weeks ago to record some songs from our Gray and Teal songbooks. Please enjoy and sing out wherever you are. First Unitarian Society's building occupies the traditional land of the Dakota people, land ceded in 1851 by a treaty not yet honored or fulfilled by the U.S. government. We acknowledge that the present use of this land is rooted in the exploitation of Indigenous people. Our theme this month is story. In her gathering poem, Reverend Catherine Hawker-Self calls us to the various stories we have about ourselves. She writes, "Come burdened, come savvy, come aging, come discouraged, come wanting, come full, come longing, come drifting, come. Come, let us gather in community."
Each week when we gather, we light our chalice and share one of the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism, or one of the aspirations of our congregation. This week we light the chalice remembering the 4th principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Now for our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. I'm Allison Wyeth, Director of Religious Education for First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. And I'd like to invite all the young folks that are listening to Assembly today to gather around, get comfortable, because now it's time for our Time for All Ages. How many of you listening at home enjoy a good superhero story? I know I do. In one part of the superhero story that I think is the best part is when they explain how the person got to be who they are, the origin story. Maybe there was a radioactive spider bite, or a super serum, or they were born on another planet. And the bad guys in the stories have origins too. Everybody has a reason for who they are. Today's story is an origin story too, but maybe not exactly the kind you might be expecting. The Bad Seed by Jory John. I'm a bad seed. A bad seed. Oh yeah, it's true. The other seeds, they look at me and they say, that seed is so bad. When they think I'm not listening, they mumble, there goes a bad seed. But I can hear them. I have good hearing for a seed. How bad am I? You really want to know? Well, I never put things back where they belong. I'm late to everything. I tell long jokes with no punchlines. I never wash my hands or my feet. I lie about pointless stuff. I cut in line every time. I stare at everybody. I glare at everybody. I finish everybody's sentences and I never listen. And I do lots of other bad things too. Know why? Because I'm a bad seed. A bad seed. I just can't help it. Sure, I wasn't always this bad. I was born a humble seed on a simple sunflower in an unremarkable field. I had a big family, seeds everywhere. We found ways of having fun. We were close. But then the petals dropped and our flower drooped. It's kind of a blur. I remember a bag. Everything went dark and then a giant. I thought I was a goner. I thought I was done for. I screamed and hollered, but I was spit out at the last possible second. I flew through the air and I landed under the bleachers with a huge thud. When I woke up, it was dark outside. A wad of gum had softened my fall. I felt okay, but something had changed in me. I'd become a different seed entirely. I'd become a bad seed. A bad seed. That's right. I stopped smiling. I kept to myself. I drifted. I was a friend to nobody and bad to everybody. I was lost on purpose. I lived inside a soda can. I didn't care, and it suited me. Until recently. I've made a big decision. I've decided I don't want to be a bad seed anymore. I'm ready to be happy. It's hard to be good when you're so used to being bad, but I'm trying. I'm taking it one day at a time. Sure, I still forget to listen, and I still show up late, and I still talk during movies, and I do all kinds of other bad stuff. But I also say thank you, and I say please, and I smile, and I hold doors open for people. Not always, but sometimes. And even though I feel bad sometimes, I also feel kind of good. And it's sort of a mix. All I can do is keep trying and keep thinking, maybe I'm not such a bad seed after all. Hey, look, there goes that bad seed. Actually, he's not all that bad anymore. I heard that. So what does our friend the sunflower seed have to teach us? One bit of wisdom is for us to understand and remember that the stories told about us by ourselves and by others can become deeply interwoven into how we see ourselves, which means we need to be very careful to be kind and thoughtful about what we say about each other and about ourselves in case we start to believe it. Another bit of wisdom is that just like our little friend, we can decide to change our stories if they stop working for us or don't feel good. It isn't easy. It may take a while. We may be imperfect at it. And we may find that others take a while to adjust, but we can change our stories. Perhaps today you can spend some time thinking about the stories told about you and those told about the people around you? Which ones are in need of updating? What might you do to change your story for the better?
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots only grows, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Since our founding in 1881, members and friends' support of First Unitarian Society has been essential for our ongoing mission. Our Sunday assemblies, community celebrations, cultural enrichment, and work in social justice come to you with the hard work of our dedicated staff and volunteers. Your contributions will help assure the continuing work of First Unitarian Society. Give now at PayPal, the Give Plus app, or firstunitarian.org/donate. Thank you. On Sundays, when we gather, we take a few moments to reflect on the joys, the sorrows, and the milestones of the human experience. We do this so that we stay in touch with our own humanity. We do this to remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness. We do this so that no one among us is alone, either in celebrating a joy or in facing the burdens of life. On this sunny Sunday morning, we remember Mother's Day. It's a joyful day. It can also be a melancholy day. It's a day of complex emotions for many. May you commemorate the day in a way that is meaningful for you and for those you love. We now take a moment of silence to reflect on all the challenges and heartbreak going on in our lives and in our world. And with gratitude, we think of all those who are leading lives of justice, service, and compassion. Let us now share a moment of silence.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found our need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer.
Here is a poem from Nanying Stella Wong, entitled Three Sweatshop Women. The yardage flows. In the arc of white light, eyes untangle threads of necessity, needling the cloth as centuries' skilled hands feed the machines. A Cheongshan woman declares, "These bright stripes bring my dead eyes alive," and makes her machine sing. Another piece, 3 dozen, money to send old Ma to buy ginseng. Perched high on a stool, one from village of Toinsan snaps scissors in porcelain hands, closed like jaws of the shark. She was here looking for new world long ago. One day, my mirror showed me my white head, looking now for what world? Only cut, 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 pattern after pattern. The small lady, turning half smiles, she sees a carp in autumn petals, leaves, the water of her years she has swallowed. Her children, they can leap to higher waters, become chemist, doctor, engineer. She leans on her iron, presses smooth each piece in steam of purpose. The long cord trails to her timing. The garments grow. There is a perfect mother. Oh, no, not me. Thank you. No, she's demure and loving and selfless and always knows exactly what to do. And she's not really a person in her own right. She exists to mother. She's the platonic ideal of mother, not really a fully realized human. She's sort of the Jesus equivalent of mother, perfect in every way, human, but without sin. How do we know? Because we see her everywhere. We've seen her in the movies and we've seen her in TV shows, perhaps most perfectly personified by Barbara Billingsley in Father Knows Best. Well, the pearls. Oh, yes, we see her everywhere, and we see our reverence for Mother everywhere, especially on this greeting card day. What's the narrative of Mother's Day that you learned growing up? Is it that good kids bring breakfast to mom in bed? That happy families are the norm? That one mom plus one dad plus 2 kids plus 1 dog makes a happy family? That moms are always supportive? That motherhood is natural and rewarding in equal measure? Sometimes these stories are even true. Sometimes, and not very often. To be human is to be birthed into the world. Each of us has a birth mother. Mother's Day is hard with the common narrative around it being a greeting card kind of jolliness, while the real story of our own lives can be complicated. For some, Mother's Day is this happy, joyous day. For some, the relationship is fraught with past hurt or present disappointment. For some, the pain of loss is especially tender this year. Or the wound is old and scarred over, but still has a familiar ache. Or perhaps your longing for a birth story is a longing for something that never happened. Or this day is just a hurdle to get past in an otherwise happily childless life. And for some of us, today is one in which we celebrate being and having a good mom. What is especially welcome in this space is the recognition of the complexity of this day. To be human is to have stories, to hold together and to make meaning from the various narratives we create from our experience. Stories are the fruit of our experience. Something happens and we tell a story about it. In my family, we tend to tell stories over and over, and they really take root. Here's how one story goes for me. When I was a little girl, sometimes I went fishing with my grandfather. One time he told me I was too noisy for the fish, and I don't remember going with him again. And this is how the story got stuck in my head as not good at fishing. Now, this was no great loss for me because I didn't particularly enjoy fishing. It was slow and it was smelly and it was muddy and buggy, and I had to sit still and be quiet. Still, I liked being outside and with my grandfather on the bank of the pond out in the country at what we called the place. Now that I think about it, though, as I deconstruct that story, I doubt that Big Daddy had planned a big fishing expedition for me to teach me this essential craft. That wasn't really his way. More likely, I was in his charge for the day and he was going fishing and I tagged along. As a grown-up man, used to sitting still on a stool on the bank, worms in a coffee can. Maybe he was about the same age I am now. He was unaccustomed to the rhythm of a 5-year-old girl, wondering about, poking into everything, asking every question under the sun. So his comment about me being noisy was just a comment, just an offhand comment. For me, it got buried as a nugget of truth, and maybe even a moment of separation from belonging. Much more than wanting to fish, I wanted to please. And while I never once doubted that Big Daddy loved me, I was beginning to learn that I was a town girl, one made for dance class and clean places rather than smelly, muddy, buggy places. We are each made up of stories that land and get planted. That bad seed, he had a story that he was a bad seed. Something bad had happened and he was just going to be bad. Until one day, he decided there may be a different way to live my life. In what way can I change this story? We're all made up of stories, individually and collectively. We meet someone and we get to know them. We tell them our story, where our people are from, if we know it, what work we do in the world, if that's important to us, what influencers helped to shape our lives. And then these folks we encounter make up stories about us, who we are in the world, what meaning we have in their lives, how we fit in the community they are also creating. These intersecting stories are the fabric of our community and have the funny quality of being both malleable and rooted. Stories get stuck in our heads. They're shorthand for all the complexity of our lives, all the learning that we are doing anew each day with each bump in the road or each hurdle crossed. Stories are the way we go from stereotype, which is always a single and incomplete story, to complexity, to something of essence. In Nanying Stella Wong's poem about the 3 sweatshop women, we learn from these short and simple lines something of the essence of each woman. Imagine the scene. Let's tell a story about these 3 women in a sweatshop. We see a clothing factory, sun filtering through dirty windows, perhaps, dust motes in the air, the sound of 100 sewing machines in action, women hunched over their work. As I imagine them, in this story. There's only one story here. The story is poverty, no hope, their purpose usurped only for profit. That I, a Western woman, may have whatever garment I want at whatever time I choose it or can afford to have it. The poet invites us to see just 3 of these women up close. The one who looks for beauty, who says, "These stripes bring my dead eyes to life." Something new. The one who reflects on her own dreams deferred. She came thinking there would be something more, and cut, 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 snip, 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 pattern after pattern. This was all there was. And the one who works in service for her family, that they may leap to higher waters. Suddenly, through this poem, it's not just a sea of beings hunched over their machines, but the lens focuses in, and we see 3 as individual people with a whole complexity of their lives. And the poet shares their essence with us. One of my favorite stories, I was asked about this week. What is a novel that has stayed with you and changed the way you saw things for long after you read the novel? And one of my favorite novels on the shelf behind me here is The Red Tent by Anita Diamant. You may know this story. It takes a very minor verse in the Bible about the story of Dinah, and she was she was a daughter, I think, of Jacob, and there's a whole story that goes into the background. Is this short verse in the Bible about her, and the writer takes it and dives in to a whole story in the background, her life and what it meant, and how eventually that one verse got written in a way that defined her, but in fact, she was so much more. That's what stories are about. Stereotypes, which are always limited and incomplete, give us one little slice of something on the surface, but in fact, we can go underneath, and there's an entire tapestry, an entire fabric of life beneath that. And that's true for mothers and children and fathers and all of us in our community. I heard someone say not very long ago that it seems like everything is about racism now. Can't we talk about something besides racism? White people are just made to feel guilty about everything. Yes, we shouldn't agree to the stereotypes, and I'm trying to learn, and I don't just really want to read another book, but does everything have to be about racism? I think we are in a moment when story that has been right here on the surface is going whoosh into all that's under and beneath it, to all the complexity of the ways that white supremacy culture has had a hold on the psyche, has been so much a part of the narrative that has gotten rooted in my understanding of who I am in the world. And I think for myself that dismantling white supremacy culture will be a lifetime of work, of unspooling that story and learning to tell it in a new and different way. I'm not a bad seed, and I'm not a perfect mother. You're not a bad seed, and you're not a perfect anything. None of us are. And how can this continual learning and leaning into the great freedom project, the liberatory project of dismantling white supremacy culture, take us down into the rich tapestry beyond stereotype into something that is more essential. I mentioned earlier that Barb and I recorded some songs, and you know that some of the songs in our gray and teal songbooks, well, sometimes they have troublesome language. You may hear God more than you want to. You may hear it less than you want to. The song we'll sing at the end today, We'll Build a Land, uses gender binary language of sisters and brothers. When the lyric sings sisters and brothers, we might sing all our relations instead and move into something that's beyond binary language, or not. When we sing, we'll build a land, we will build a land, try imagining a humble community, a community rooted in our own sense of not superiority, but commonality, rebuilding a land that once existed in harmony. Was there ever such a land? I don't know. But it's not for us to build something that never was. It's to get to some essential peace. If we use the project of dismantling white supremacy culture in our minds, what does it look like to be partners in building a land? This is how we change a story. I invite you to think about this as a takeaway, to try this. Imagine for a moment what someone would say about you as a stereotype. If somebody were going to talk about you, what would be the sort of stereotypical thing they might say? Might have something to do with your gender or your race or ethnicity or class or age. You got that in your mind? Now, imagine how you would tell your story to someone with real complexity. The people you came from, the people you're involved with in your work or your life or your hobbies or how you find joy in the world. Imagine your story in all its complexity. Got that? Now, imagine what you would say as what is an essential, the essential part of yourself. A stereotype is short, it's shorthand. What is essential about you is concise. See the difference? That's where story connects us. I invite you to tell the story about yourself that is the most nourishing, the one that is the most generous. And live that story out in the world. Blessed be. May it be so.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build
Thanks so much for joining us today, and happy Mother's Day in whatever way is meaningful to you. Our closing words are by Maya Angelou from her poem, Continue. My wish for you is that you continue. Continue to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Continue to dare to love deeply and risk everything for the good thing. And continue to float happily in the sea of infinite substance, which set aside riches for you before you even had a name. Continue. Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.